What is going on YouTube? Welcome to a 1v1 game in between the Muslim and the Viper on a map that's not commonly seen in tournaments because this is a ranked 1v1 game. Well, not really ranked, it's more like quick match, but anyways, it is a 1v1 game outside a tournament in a quick match on Nagari, a map that is usually known for being a little stalematy, a little unbalanced, and part of the reason why it's not incorporated in tournament map pools frequently. On the right side, spawning in the red is the Viper playing as the HRE in red. And the Muslim is going to be handling HRE as well in blue over here, starting off with the Prelate moving all the way to the north already. So part of the equation over here for both players will be how they can use the Prelate to boost their food and wood getters at the same time. And as you see, Viper has a wood line very close to his town center, so he's able to affect both the lumberjacks and the food villagers over here with the Prelate. Whereas on the other side, you'll have to micro that Prelate in between your wood line and the sheep for the Muslim. Nice little touch for him is that he's moving the sheep to the other side of the town center, which means that he's gonna have to have less walking time for that Prelate. If the sheep were on the other side, the Prelate would have to walk all the way through here to boost those villagers. This being said, as you see, this villager right now being boosted under the town center also means that this Prelate is idle, and right now all of these lumberjacks are unboosted. And you want to boost those lumberjacks all the time because you need to get as much wood as you can so you can start popping out fishing ships. Viper is dropping a dock on the right side over here, and on the left side we do not have a dock coming in for the Muslim. Instead, he decides to place his in the central area. So he's going to opt for the more risky approach over here, having his dock exposed, but it's also the one that pays off in the long run because you're gonna have a ton of fish to work with once you get to mid-late game. Whereas on the other side, in these side ponds, the amount of fish varies, especially the amount of deep fish that you can access varies quite a lot. As you see, Viper only has 2 deep fish to work with, and the Muslim's own pond actually has 3, so this would be a slightly better pond for the Muslim to work with compared to Viper's one. Looking at the Viper's base over here, he's already set up with the gold mining operation, whereas on the other side, the gold mine is just not being built for the Muslims, so he seems to be a little behind. Remember that the walking distance is also greater for his villagers walking from the town center to this central pond than it is for Viper to get up to the right side over here, so tiny bit less efficiency, I would say, at the beginning for the Muslim over here, and that's something that could be very punishing in a Holy Roman Empire mirror. Now let's talk about the civilization matchup over here, because this is not a matchup that you commonly see on this map. Oftentimes this map is a Rus mirror, or you're going to see some Mongols incorporated, but generally you don't associate this map with the Holy Roman Empire, partly because you want to have some good early aggression civilizations, particularly ones that are also good on water aggression. So Rus being able to go for early scouts from a potential hunting cabin or going for knights is definitely an appealing civilization, especially if you combine it with the fact that Loggia attack ships can work very effectively at killing the opponent's fish. And of course, having this long pond over here, the Loggia fishing ships that don't have to return the food that they carry, also becomes quite relevant in mid-late game. So you get the feel that Holy Roman Empire, while it definitely has its upside for this map with the powerful land economy, it's not as good as some other alternatives. On the left side, the Muslim is yet to place his Aachen Chapel. On the right side, Viper is already coming in with his own. He's building it with 7 villagers, so this is a rush towards Feudal Age. And I wonder if he's going to start sending a villager forward. Indeed, he will. He's going to drop a dock in the middle area. I am fairly certain that the Muslim is looking for this one, and he wants to see if Viper is going to dock the central pond. He needs to be prepared for this one. He placed his dock in this central pond, so he should be aware of the possibility of Viper trying to contest that. Right now, you have 1 deep fish to work with over here for the Muslim right next to the dock. That's actually very effective. Whereas for Viper, he has to sail a little bit further away with a couple of fishing ships. Only 3 fishing ships taking 1 deep fish right next to the dock. The other one is being taken by 2 additional fishing ships out here. And as it seems, the Muslim is going to find that 4th villager. Viper doesn't have his scout nearby. He's pulling it as we speak. But without animation cancelling, it's not really going to be possible for that scout from the Muslim to finish that villager off unless he's given a ton of time. Viper actually tried to kill that sheep, but then he's realizing that he needs to build this dock as fast as possible. His scout is now arriving, and the Muslim is likely committed to try and kill this villager as soon as possible. He might actually be able to yoink this villager out here, because there's no way Viper's scout is going to take down this scout from the Muslim, And suddenly the question becomes, can this villager finish the dog before it gets taken down? It is down to 6 HP now, so 2 more hits for that scout. Looks like the dog is going to be finished in time over here, but the Muslim is going to be able to retaliate by killing that villager out there, so at least there is some return value for the Viper here, getting that dock up before losing that villager. But now the Muslim is bringing in a second scout, and that should allow him to try and take this fight against the scout of Viper. For now, he's pulling back his weakened scout back to his base, as he's just now finishing up the Aachen Chapel. Viper, no land production buildings. He's going to focus entirely on water combat, as we're seeing the first galley pop out for our red player here. Aachen Chapel finished as the Prelate is going to garrison inside. Viper is going to eat a couple of arrows on that scout, but ultimately he gets away without major damage taken. And we're going to have a defensive tower out here for the Muslim. This is a pretty clever move for multiple reasons. It allows you to keep your villager nearby. It prevents the enemy scouts from throwing a couple of torches towards your dock, weakening it, and potentially allowing the ships to finish it off a tiny bit easier once you get deeper into the game. But most importantly, this gives you a ton of firepower to work with. Once you garrison the scouts, you can actually discourage the aggression from Viper by using this scout to a certain extent. The tower doesn't have a ton of range, but it actually makes it a little more difficult for Viper to take fights close to this dock over here. First galley pops out as well for the Muslim, and with the healing ability of the dock, he will force Viper back for the time being. Viper preparing for a long game here, getting the palisades up on the right side. The Muslim isn't really going for any voling or any kind of land aggression either, so he's just fully focusing on the water. Viper did scout the back pond here from the Muslim, so he's aware of the fact that the Muslim is not on a second dock behind his base. Whereas for Viper, he does have a second dock in the middle now, so he's going to double down on that production, while, of course, having a very safe fishing eco at the back of his base. The Muslim has 2 scouts running close to the base of Viper over here. Viper spreading out his prelates because his Aachen Chapel wouldn't be able to reach his gold miner, so he added a second prelate out here to boost all of his economy. For now, 2 galleys for Viper, but he's not moving out just yet. 2 galleys up as well for the Muslim. He's got 2 docks to work with. And one thing to consider here, as we're going to have an engagement between these galleys, is that Viper built a total of 3 docks, 2 in the middle and 1 on the side, whereas the Muslim only built 2, so the Muslim actually saved quite a lot of wood over here. Of course, the trade-off is that his fishing eco is now a little bit more exposed. Galleys moving in from the Viper over here. They're focusing down the fishing ships. 1 goes down. Viper, of course, trying to avoid taking the engagement against those galleys, because the galleys take quite a lot of shots to take down, so you're trying to focus down those fishing ships, as the Muslim is pulling the fishing ships now to repair his own vessels, pushing Viper back for the time being. Over here, we got 1 scout harassing the villagers here for the Muslim, and I think the Muslim could just surround that scout and kill it. Looks like Viper will get away for the time being. And on the right side, it looks like a villager almost gets yoinked. In fact, it does get killed by the forces of the Muslim. He actually sent those 2 scouts to the right side, realizing that there is an opening and a chance to just burn this dock down with the scouts. He killed the villager that was nearby. Failing to get it back to the town center was Viper, as we're seeing a blacksmith being dropped for Viper. He wants to grab those attack upgrades for the galleys. Blacksmith, not there yet for the Muslim. As you see, instead, he's thinking about going into Castle Age, and Castle Age would give him the access to the Hulks, as well as a couple of important naval upgrades as well. Scouts indeed trying to torch down that dock. Viper has walled off the northern side, so military forces of the Muslim wouldn't be able to get there and just support these scouts at burning down this dock. So it comes down to these 2 scouts having to deal with this, but it's difficult for Viper to deal with this because he doesn't have an army, and he doesn't want to make an expensive galley to deal with this, as Viper is now sailing up rivers with 6 galleys. Up against him is 5 from the Muslim, but of course he's got the healing power of those 2 docks over there. He's got a defensive tower as well, and even a couple of fishing ships he can pull. Viper has no tools to push this one, and the Muslim, having a head start going into Castle Age, he is building the Regnitz Cathedral already, and I think he's pulling a couple more villagers as well. Indeed, he's going to rush it up with like 13, 14. Viper's dock on the right side still under attack, and soon Viper is in the danger of losing that. He's going to add 1 horseman that was just suspiciously floating for a long time. That is the first land military that we're seeing out here. Should be enough to discourage this aggression from the Muslim. But of course, the key part for our blue player right now is that he's able to get to Castle Age. And if you look at the relic distribution, there's 2 up north over here that you could relatively easily take, and the 3 additional relics are down south. Now, the Muslim doesn't have any kind of land military though, so if Viper adds some horsemen, it's gonna be difficult for the Muslim to pick up those relics. But first things first for the Muslim, it is gonna be the Hawks. Let's see if he's going to add the one. Indeed, he's adding a Hawk over here. No second Hawk added on that second dock, he won't be able to afford it. Instead, he's adding a stable, and we're seeing a couple of knights being added. That's probably the right way of doing this. He's moving out with one prelate to the south, and there is basically one horseman nearby, but the Muslim is keeping track of that, and honestly, for the Muslim, he needs to pull away this horseman from this direction, making sure that he doesn't lose that prelate to that horseman. One wolf is going to attack the prelate, but that's not really a big deal at this point. And the first hawk about to pop out for the Muslim. Other side, Viper is on the way to Castle Age as well. He is building that Ragnitz Cathedral with 9 villagers. The horseman is slowly galloping back towards the base of Viper, but this gives a window for the Muslim to pick up the first relic over here. He's being trailed by 2 wolves, but nothing to be concerned about. Although there is also going to be a scout here from Viper harassing, but ultimately it would be a surprise if the Muslim ended up losing that prelate. He's just too close to his own base, and the Ragnitz Cathedral is right next to the TC, so Viper won't be able to pursue. Meanwhile, in the middle, the Hawk is setting up. Spin to win is the name of the game. Gal is also supporting quite a bit, and Viper doesn't have his own Hawks in the field just yet, and that is a massive advantage right now for the Muslim, having that one Hawk over Viper. As you see, one Hawk already taking down first galley, second galley goes down, the third galley is also taken down. Viper's adding a demolition ship, but as long as the galleys are there, the galleys should be able to take down the demo. The big question right now is that this Hawk isn't firing. The Hawk for the Muslim wasn't firing, and that is just going to give a nice window for Viper to snipe down those galleys. Demolition ship now moving in here for the Muslim, as it is going to deliver one big punch on the galley of Viper over here. Wasn't as ideal as it could have been though, and now the galleys are going to be forced to take down those demolition ships out there because the demos are trying to pursue the Hawks. Demo trying to close distance, and it's going to trigger just a little off target. The Hawk gets away, but you see what's coming in that central pond. It's going to be a war of demolition ships, and that's why it's so vital for Viper that he was able to take down those galleys, because the galleys have a bonus damage against demolition ships. So the moment you take all of those down, your opponent doesn't have a direct answer to the demos other than making his own. Looking at the relic situation, though, you already get one relic for both players, and the second relic is being picked up by Viper. I said that these 2 relics are accessible for both up north, but it looks like both of those were picked up by Viper quite swiftly, in fact. And now it looks like the second relic for the Muslim is being brought in, and I think the third one has to be on the way as well, because there was 3 relics down south, and I only count 1 being brought in here. Indeed, the Muslim has the second one, so it's gonna come down to this third one, and the Viper is just barely missing that monk over there. This is not a monk that's being seen by Viper. He's trying to hide that prelate as much as possible. There's also a couple of knights hunting for this, but what you want to do is hide it in the stealth forest, because the knights have such a low vision that it's gonna be impossible for those knights to spot it, and then just wait for those guys to go away, pretty much. Looks like this prelate is also gonna get intercepted here by the knights, not something that the Muslim was aware of, but at least now he knows that he needs to avoid this area, because his own prelate carrying the relic is what matters the most. Looking at the eco numbers real quickly, it's a considerable eco lead for the Muslim, 47 compared to 40 from Viper as we speak. Viper having a couple of demolition ships, kind of stopped making vessels in the middle, adding another demo just now. And for the Muslim, he's also adding a couple more Hawks over here, has 1 demolition ship to work with, as he is still planning to bring that relic back. That scholar, I'm always confusing the names over here, that's not a scholar, it's a prelate, is trying to sneak back. Viper might actually spot it over here. Let's see. The line of sight on that horseman isn't gigantic, but oh, look at that. The sneak. The sneak is big here, and the Muslim is actually getting away with that relic. Viper wasn't able to spot it, and the Knights also have a pretty poor line of sight, as in the middle we have a big clash coming in. Demolition ships triggering left and right. There was a couple of vessels sunk from both sides, but ultimately Viper seems to be running out of ships over here. 2 demolition ships triggered, but at the end of the day, the Muslim still has 3 Hawks to push up with, and the Hawks are just so fast when it comes to destroying those docks. And if the Muslim just gets close, he could destroy those docks in a matter of seconds. Not only does the Muslim have currently a 7 villagers lead, or 7 eco lead to be precise, you also have him controlling the central pond, potentially spreading out his demolition ships, and of course the Hawks as well, to make sure that a single demo can't sink all of those. even triggers a demo in between the two docks, further weakening those, and Viper is likely going to have to give up on this position at this point. There's a Sacred Site under the control of Viper over here on the right side, and he's moving towards the left side as well. Has a fairly sizable force of knights, but this is something that DeMusliM is able to match. And remember, DeMusliM is going to be on 3 relics compared to 2 as well. Viper having both of his docks set on fire. Now DeMusliM is going to have a clear fishing here, and he's going to be able to start adding in additional fishing ships. As you see over here, the moment he knows the central pond is secure, he's going to start adding additional fishing ships, also neutralizing the Sacred Site up north. Looking at the army numbers, it's 22 for Viper, 41 for DeMusliM though. Massive advantage for DeMusliM, but you have to keep in mind that part of this is on the water, because if you look at the knight numbers, I count 16 right now for DeMusliM, and for Viper, that's pretty much the same. 16 just galloping to the left over here with the 17th one just now arriving. Viper now pumping out knights from triple stables over here, as opposed to DeMusliM having triple stables as well. So both sides having approximately the same production over here. Viper using that one leftover horseman to scout what his opponent is up to. And you see DeMusliM already has the market up. He knows exactly he needs to start balancing his eco, because his gold income is going to be tremendous as the knights clash each other on the left side in that stealth forest. There is no more animation canceling to be had over here, so it all comes down to just the upgrades being better on those knights, or just the numbers being better. It looks like DeMusliM is going to be the one retreating out of this one. Viper's numbers temporarily were better, and suddenly those knights have an open path into the base of DeMusliM, and there's not a single spearman that can stop them. It's all the knights fight. DeMusliM is going to have to pull his forces back over here. He's taking the rage, trying to combine his forces with the reinforcements coming in. Viper is also bringing in some reinforcements though. And Viper also trickling in a couple of knights to the north, because he realizes that these lumberjacks and these gold miners are quite a bit exposed here, and there's just no defense there for DeMusliM. This could be the first very successful raid here for Viper, something that he desperately needs, because he's quite low on the eco department compared to his opponent. Knights now coming in, and that could be a prelude also being picked off here. Villagers going down left and right, and on the left side Viper is moving in with 19 knights. Against him is only 16, and the average condition of the knights is also slightly better for Viper, I do believe, but he's missing his opportunity to charge in over here. Now DeMusliM is going to disengage, trying to lure his opponents into the town center fire, but ultimately Viper is going to call it a quits, at least for this charge. He's retreating on the right side as well. Hawks are getting some nice shots over there, sinking one of those corpses into that pond. The second knight also got taken down by the Hawk over here. Viper once again trying to take that Sacred Side, but with the knights approaching, he's going to retreat for the time being. Looking at those resources, Viper, however, is banging up quite a lot, and that raises the question of Imperial Age. Every time that the HRE players bank up resources like that, it raises the question of Imperial Age. Getting into Imp, getting the Pass of Swabia going, and then just suddenly adding 30-40 villagers in just a couple of minutes is just such a power spike for the HRE. Knights from DeMusliM now moving out here. He's got 36 attack on those, 37 for the lances of the Red Knights, which means that Viper has got one extra attack upgrade. And one thing I appreciate him doing over here is healing up those Knights. Every single bit of an HP that he recuperates in this period is something that will help take this fight. And if you look at the forces of DeMusliM, many of those knights are heavily battered, so a successful charge over here from Viper could wipe out a lot of forces. But speaking of a successful charge, that's not something that Viper had up until he turns around to the rest of the forces. The initial couple of knights charged in without their lances braced, so ultimately they just used their swords, which means that you missed out on a successful lance charge. But the second batch charged in there, and DeMusliM pulls it a day, retreats, trying to find different angle to push from, and potentially trying to combine his forces with the ones coming from the north. The gate being weakened could actually give him a window to break in from, also detaching 3 knights to the south, and potentially having a chance to kill a couple of villagers on that mill. Viper still has all his knights back at home here down south. Looks like the knights from DeMusliM were tempted to jump on those stables, and now you get the feel that Viper could easily trap the forces of DeMusliM over here. Indeed, here comes Viper, and that is a tremendous amount of knights falling out of the base of Viper. DeMusliM is in full retreat, many of his knights being heavily damaged, and Viper sees the blood in the water. He's been healing up his knights the whole time. Behind this one, Viper is going to lose a couple of villagers on his wood line, but those knights will be cleaned up, and Viper almost managing to trap those forces in there, but there is the retaliation from the Muslim, because while Viper wasn't watching, those knights are breaking through the north, and suddenly the knights are heading towards that dock on the right side. They want to burn it down, want to prevent Viper from using these fishing ships, and also there's a gold mine nearby that could have been raided, wasn't raided in the end, because the villagers were pulled away. All the knights from Viper being pulled to the south. The Muslim at this point just needs to leverage the fact that Viper is moving out with his entire army, so there is a massive window for the Muslim to do damage with these two knights. Not even 2 knights, 10 knights, what am I talking about? Inside the base of Viper here, and it looks like we do have a bit of a maneuver warfare here. The Muslim being able to outmaneuver Viper, Viper lost track of him, and now the Muslim just pops out of the forest over here, and Viper is like, oh shoot, I'm in trouble. Or is he in trouble? Because one thing that Viper could do is do the exact same thing, just head towards the base of the opponent, neither of these players having the forces to hold off such a large amount of village or knights. And the thing is that if you look at the villager count, it's 79 for the Muslim, 37 for Viper. So Viper has nothing to lose at this point. There is minimal amount of villagers over here that can still be killed, and you see the Muslim is actually going for the landmarks, and Viper charging in here, he's going in for the snipes on the Regnitz Cathedral, and the Muslim is realizing, oh shoot, I don't have the power to stop this. There's even a couple of prelates over here for Viper to heal up those forces on the go, and it actually turns into a race for those landmarks. Every single villager for the Viper is garrisoned. There is no more to lose. He's down to 36. His opponent has doubled the eco, so Viper's gotta go all in here, and all the villagers are now being pulled by the Muslim. Viper is giving up on the attempt to try and take down the Regnitz Cathedral. Remember that whenever the HRE players are getting pressured, for example in the town center, emergency repairs is always an option. Speaking of which, the Muslim is probably going to lose all his knights over here, because emergency repairs is something that Viper could pop. Knights are now moving in from Viper, and suddenly the villager count of the Muslim is just plummeting out here. It was like 80 some time ago, now it's down to 60, and he's losing villagers left and right, and the lumberjacks on the left side are just wide open for raid. You just need 2 knights to hit these, and that's exactly what you're going to see here. The Muslim is losing most of his knights, and ultimately it comes down to killing villagers over killing buildings. The Muslim came in trying to kill villas, but the reality is that Viper didn't have villagers, whereas on the other side the Muslim did, so Viper was able to do substantially more damage with those knights, simply because there was just a lot more to kill. The Muslim came in here, basically didn't find any villagers to kill, and ended up trying to snipe the buildings that just didn't work against the HRE, and suddenly the Muslim is down to 44 villagers. He still has a large army population, but it's a little deceiving because many of that is just hawks. If you look at the knight numbers, it's very underwhelming. The Muslim has 7 knights down here and about 12 more coming in, whereas for Viper, his army numbers are still looking very convincing. That's 30 knights over here, and we mentioned that there is some prelates nearby that can continue with the healing. And you see Viper trying to take down the Regnitz Cathedral, just trying to make sure those relics get popped out, as the Muslim trying to snipe the prelates over there. The charge is successful, 1 prelate goes down, but 2 more survive over here. Town center will focus down 1 prelate. A second prelate will also be taken down by the town center over here. Viper still not giving up on his attempt to try and burn down the Regnitz Cathedral. He is going to set it on fire with the next volley of torches, I do believe. Indeed, here it goes. And now Viper is just going to start trading knights over here. Town center fire, helping quite a bit here for the Muslim. Both players with very low villager counts now though, and Viper, he has his window to start killing those villagers, repairing the cathedral out there. Knights getting called off from Viper. He's got many of those heavily damaged, you see. He's going to call them back, start healing those up. But in a game where his opponent had basically double the villagers as him, suddenly this is a rather even game. In fact, if you look at the economies, very exactly that eco. The Muslim has 19 villagers. The rest of them is fishing ships. And for Viper, at least he's got some villagers to work with. Of course, some of his eco is as well in fishing ships. As on the left side, we do have another scaffold coming in. Both of those sides have some heavily damaged knights over here, so it's gonna come down to whoever can focus down those weakened knights of the opponent. And as things stand, the Muslim seems to have a slightly better number over here. Indeed, Viper is going to call it a day, retreat with those remaining knights. He also lost the prelate healing this. And because the Muslim's eco here is untouchable, this is very difficult for Viper to fight against. Looks like the Hawks for the Muslim could also get some nice shots over here if Viper gets closer to the shore. And these knights now from the Muslim also moving in against the gold mine of Viper. Behind this one, Viper is trickling in a couple of knights into the base of the Muslim. But you get the feel that the Muslim is recovering mainly having an eco fueled by all those fishing ships. But here comes a new batch of knights, and as I said, both sides have some heavily damaged knights over here. The Muslim is the one now in full retreat, as the knights are now galloping into his eco, starting to kill villagers. Up north, Viper did lose about a dozen villagers on that gold mine though, and once again, Viper's eco is just almost non-existent. When the dog gets taken down, these fishing ships will become idle, and that villager count or that worker count that just shows 28 is just going to be even less in reality. Viper's got virtually no eco working for him at this point. The Muslim also lost a lot, but Viper is gone. Viper is gone over here. And you're going to have the knights galloping in, finishing off the remaining villagers. Viper isn't able to touch the food eco here of the Muslim. And of course, our blue player also has the Relic advantage in the Ragnade's Cathedral. Viper pushing the Muslims' forces all the way up north. And it looks like Viper taps out. Viper taps out. And with that, the Muslim has the game over here. Viper was in a difficult position because his eco was so much behind compared to his opponent. But ultimately, it comes down to the fact that the Ragnade's Cathedral was a little more effective. It comes down to the fact that the prelates were able to gather those free relics, but most importantly, all that fishing in the middle is probably the difference maker. So let's take a look at the stats here in just a matter of moments, because I'm curious about the overall resources collected. The Muslim was able to build up his eco much faster than his opponent, partly fueled by all of those. Where is that? Oops. I may not have access to the stats over here accidentally. Sorry for that. Looks like we're not gonna get stats for us today. But anyways, if you look at that fight, if you look at the relic distribution, the fact that the Muslim had like 30-40 fishing ships in the middle for a long time is just a tremendous amount of food income. And that's probably where it comes down to. Viper had a maximum of 7 fishing ships, and in its prime time, the Muslim had basically the same amount of villagers as Viper, but the Muslim also had like 40 fishing ships working for him, so obviously Viper was at like 40 workers and the Muslim was at 80, and ultimately he managed to just grind down Viper's base. Despite the fact that Viper actually had a beautiful counterattack, ultimately the problem for Viper was that he never was able to take down Ragnade's Cathedral, and he also wasn't able to sink the fishing eco of the opponent, and the Muslim could just boom on the water non-stop.